The moment King Darius Blackwood dropped to one knee before her, every wolf in the grand hall stopped breathing. Not because their fearsome Lycan King had never knelt before anyone, but because the woman standing above him was the same servant who had just spilled wine down his ceremonial robes. Elena Vance stood frozen, the empty silver pitcher still clutched in her trembling hands. Red wine soaked through the king's white ceremonial coat, spreading like blood across his chest. Around her, 300 of the realm's most powerful nobles had gone absolutely silent. She was dead. She was so incredibly dead. Her voice came out as a croak. Your Majesty, I'm so sorry. I didn't see you turn, and the pitcher slipped and, leave us. The king's command cut through her stammering. He wasn't looking at the wine staining his clothes. He was looking at her. Only at her. No one moved. Now. The word came out as a growl, and Elena felt the weight of his alpha command roll through the hall like thunder. All around her, wolves dropped their gazes and began shuffling toward the doors. Lords and ladies who could buy her life 1,000 times over suddenly couldn't get away fast enough. Elena tried to leave with them. She took one step back, then another. Not you. She stopped. Her heart was hammering so hard she could hear it in her ears. 23 years old, wolfless, an Omega who worked in the kitchen scrubbing pots. And she just ruined the lunar celebration and probably started a war with whatever territory the king was supposed to be impressing tonight. The last noble exited. The great doors swung shut with a boom that echoed off the vaulted ceiling. Elena finally made herself look at him. King Darius Blackwood was everything the stories claimed. Tall enough to make her feel small, broad enough to block out the light from the chandeliers behind him, and possessed of the kind of cold, brutal beauty that made sensible women run. His dark hair fell past his shoulders, held back by a simple silver circlet. His jaw could have been carved from granite, and his eyes, pale gray, almost silver, were fixed on her with an intensity that made her stomach drop. Those eyes. She knew those eyes. She'd seen them in her nightmares for 7 years. Not him specifically, she told herself. Just eyes like his. Lycan eyes. The eyes of the soldiers who burned your village. What is your name? The question startled her. She'd expected him to call for guards, to have her dragged to the dungeon, to backhand her across the hall for her clumsiness. Elena, she whispered. Elena Vance. Something shifted in his expression. Something she couldn't name. Elena. He said her name like he was tasting it, like it was the first word he'd ever learned. You have no wolf. It wasn't a question. He could smell it on her, the absence where her wolf should have been. Every Lycan could. It was her greatest shame, the reason she'd spent her life as a servant in the palace of monsters rather than running free with a pack of her own. No, Your Majesty. You are afraid of me. Yes, Your Majesty. There was no point in lying. He could hear her heartbeat. He could probably smell her fear like cheap perfume. For a long moment he simply stared at her. The wine was still spreading across his coat, probably ruining the gold embroidery, and he didn't seem to notice or care. Then, slowly, the most powerful man in 5 territories lowered himself to one knee before her. Elena stumbled backward. What are you? I, Darius Blackwood, King of the Northern Territories, Alpha of the Blackwood Pack, do hereby recognize you, Elena Vance, as my fated mate. His voice was steady, absolute, like he was pronouncing judgment on the fate of nations rather than proposing to a kitchen servant. I offer you my throne, my kingdom, and my eternal bond. Be my queen. The world tilted sideways. That's not. Elena's voice came out strangled. That's not possible. I scented you the moment you walked into this hall. He was still on his knee, still looking up at her with those silver eyes. I have waited 230 years for you. I will wait not one moment longer. 230 years. He'd been alive for 230 years. He'd probably been alive when her great-great-grandmother was born. He'd definitely been alive when his soldiers razed her village and left her an orphan at 16. Get up. The words tore out of her before she could stop them. Get up. Something flickered in his expression. Surprise, perhaps, that a wolfless servant was giving orders to a king. But he rose, unfolding to his full height, and Elena had to crane her neck to maintain eye contact. "You're in shock," he said. "That's understandable. But once the bond settles—" "I'm not in shock." Her voice was rising. She couldn't stop it. "I know exactly what's happening. You think because the moon decided we're mates, I'm supposed to just forget everything? Fall into your arms? Become your queen? The mate bond is sacred. Your soldiers burned my village to the ground." The words hit the silence like a hammer. Darius went still. 7 years ago, Elena continued, and now she was shaking, truly shaking, with a rage she'd kept buried for nearly a decade. "Silverbrook, on the eastern border. Your armies came through in the night. They said we were harboring rogues. We weren't. There were no rogues. Just farmers and merchants and children. Silverbrook." His voice had gone rough. "I remember the reports. There were confirmed rogue sightings. There was no one." Tears were burning in her eyes now, but she refused to let them fall. "I was 16. I watched my mother burn. I listened to my little sister screaming while soldiers held me down. So don't you dare tell me about sacred bonds. Don't you dare tell me the moon chose you for me. Elena, I would rather die than be your mate." The words echoed off the walls, off the ceiling, off the windows that looked out over the kingdom that had destroyed everything she'd ever loved. Darius stood perfectly still. His face had gone pale beneath the harsh light of the chandeliers, and in his silver eyes, Elena saw something she hadn't expected. Not rage at her defiance, not cold dismissal, devastation, pure, raw, bottomless devastation. The great doors burst open. "Your Majesty!" A massive man in enforcer's blacks strode into the hall, his hand already on his sword. "We heard shouting. Is the servant?" "She is not a servant." Darius's voice came out strange, hollow. "She is my. She rejected you." The enforcer's eyes went wide. In front of the entire court, she rejected the mate bond publicly. He turned on Elena with murder in his gaze. "That's treason. High treason. Marcus, stop." But Marcus was already moving. His hand closed around Elena's arm like a vice, hard enough to bruise, and he was dragging her toward the doors. "Marcus!" The king's roar shook the chandeliers. "Release her. That is a command." "Forgive me, your majesty." Marcus's grip didn't loosen. "But you are not thinking clearly. The law is absolute. Public rejection of a royal mate bond is treason against the crown. The punishment is death." Elena tried to pull free, but Marcus was a full Lycan, and she was wolfless. She might as well have been fighting against a mountain. "I am the law." Darius was moving now, striding toward them with fury blazing in his eyes. "I am the king, and I order you to. And as your enforcer, sworn to protect the crown from all threats, I am invoking the king's shield." Marcus's voice was cold, certain. "For 24 hours, you cannot override my judgment regarding security matters. It's the law you wrote yourself, your majesty, to protect you from exactly this kind of manipulation." Darius stopped. Something twisted in his expression, the realization that his own laws had just been turned against him. "She is not manipulating me. She's wolfless, weak, completely unsuitable, and she just humiliated you in front of every noble in the kingdom." Marcus shoved Elena toward the waiting guards at the door. "The dungeon will hold her until we can investigate her background. If she's a plant from a rival territory, she's not. Then we'll find out." Marcus turned, and his voice softened slightly. "My king, my friend, you have served this realm for 2 centuries with wisdom and strength. Let me protect you now as I always have. 24 hours. That's all I ask." The guards' hands closed around Elena's arms. They began pulling her toward the corridor that led to the dungeons. She twisted, looking back over her shoulder. Darius stood in the middle of the empty hall, wine-stained and alone, watching her go with an expression she would never forget. Not anger, not cruelty, Not the cold calculation of the monster she'd built in her mind. Just devastation. Just a man who had waited 230 years for something that had just slipped through his fingers. Good, Elena told herself as the guards dragged her into the darkness. Let him hurt. Let him know what it feels like to lose something. But even as she thought it, something twisted in her chest. Something small and unfamiliar and terrible. Something that felt almost like regret. Wanting to see what would happen next? Subscribe to this channel to get to listen to more of our upcoming exciting stories. Click on the subscribe button now. Thank you. Chapter 2. The dungeon was cold. Not the kind of cold that came from stone walls and poor heating. Elena had lived with that her whole life. This was a different cold. A deliberate one. The kind designed to break wolves who depended on their inner fire to survive. Lucky for her, she had no wolf to freeze. Elena sat in the corner of her cell, knees pulled to her chest, watching the rats skitter along the far wall. 3 days. 3 days since the guards had thrown her into this pit. 3 days since she'd screamed her rejection at the most powerful man in 5 territories. She didn't regret it. She wouldn't regret it. But in the dark hours of the night, when the cold crept deepest into her bones, she found herself replaying that moment. The way his face had crumbled. The devastation in those silver eyes. He's a monster, she reminded herself. His soldiers murdered your family. His kingdom destroyed everything you loved. The reminder helped. Somewhat. Footsteps echoed down the corridor. Not the heavy tread of guards. She'd learned to recognize that by now. This was different. Slower. More deliberate. A shadow fell across her cell. Leave us. The king's voice. Elena's spine went rigid. She heard the guard's footsteps retreat. A key turned in the lock. The cell door swung open with a groan of rusted hinges. King Darius Blackwood stepped into her prison. He looked different. Gone was the wine-stained ceremonial coat. He wore simple black now. A warrior's clothes, practical and unadorned. His hair was loose around his shoulders, and there were shadows under his eyes that hadn't been there 3 days ago. Good, Elena thought viciously. I hope you haven't slept at all. You shouldn't be here, she said. I'm the king. I can be wherever I choose. Your enforcer seemed to disagree with that philosophy. Something flickered across his face. Marcus overstepped. The king's shield expired 2 days ago. You're no longer under his authority. And yet I'm still in a dungeon. Because I cannot simply release you. Darius moved further into the cell, and Elena pressed herself harder against the wall. He noticed, stopped, kept a careful distance between them. You publicly rejected a royal mate bond. The law demands consequences. Then give me my consequences. Execute me and be done with it. I will not execute my mate. I'm not your mate. The words came out sharp, bitter. I rejected you, in front of everyone. The bond is broken. The bond cannot be broken. His voice was quiet, certain. It can be refused, denied, buried so deep that neither of us ever feels its pull again. But broken? No. What the moon creates, no mortal can destroy. Elena laughed. The sound was ugly even to her own ears. Is that what you tell yourself? That I'll eventually come around? That if you keep me locked up long enough, I'll suddenly forget what your kingdom did to me? I tell myself nothing. Darius took another step closer, then seemed to catch himself. I came here to listen, to understand. You spoke of Silverbrook, of soldiers, of your mother burning. His jaw tightened. Tell me everything. Why? So you can craft a pretty excuse? So you can explain how the murder of innocent people was somehow justified. So I can know the truth. The truth. Elena wanted to laugh again, but something in his expression stopped her. He looked uncertain. Wrong-footed. Like a man who'd stepped onto ground he'd assumed was solid and found it crumbling beneath his feet. Fine. She pushed herself to her feet. The cold had stiffened her joints, but she refused to show weakness. You want the truth? Here's your truth. She crossed the cell until she was standing directly in front of him. close enough to smell him, pine and wood smoke and something darker, something that called to a part of her she didn't want to acknowledge. I was 16 years old. We lived in Silverbrook, a farming village on the eastern border. My father was the village healer. My mother raised chickens and sang while she worked. My sister, Lily, was 8. She had this laugh. Elena's voice cracked. She forced herself to continue. She had this laugh that could make anyone smile, even strangers. Darius said nothing, just listened. His silver eyes never left her face. Your soldiers came at night. No warning, no demands. They just started killing. My father tried to protect us. They cut him down in our doorway. My mother pushed Lily and me out the back, told us to run for the forest. But they caught us before we reached the tree line. The memories were rising now, thick and choking, and Elena couldn't stop them. They held me down, made me watch while they dragged my mother back to the house. I could hear her screaming, begging them to spare her children. And then the house was on fire, and she was still inside, and the screaming. She broke off. Her whole body was shaking. The screaming stopped, she finished quietly. Eventually. And your sister? They took her. I don't know where. I don't know what happened to her. Elena's hands curled into fists. I lay there in the mud until morning, played dead. When the soldiers finally left, I crawled into the forest and kept crawling until I couldn't anymore. A merchant found me 3 days later, half dead from exposure. He brought me to the capital. I've been working in the palace kitchens ever since. Silence stretched between them. Elena could hear her own heartbeat, too fast and too loud in the quiet of the dungeon. You've been here, Darius said slowly, in my palace, for 7 years, working in my kitchens. And I never knew. Why would you? I'm an Omega, wolfless, invisible, just another pair of hands to scrub your pots and serve your meals. Elena's voice turned bitter. The irony isn't lost on me. Serving the kingdom that destroyed my life. But a girl has to eat. Who commanded the soldiers? The question caught her off guard. What? The soldiers who attacked your village. Who commanded them? What did they look like? What colors did they wear? Elena frowned. She tried so hard to forget those details, to bury them along with everything else from that night. They wore black, black with silver trim, and there was a banner, a wolf with a broken chain. All the color drained from Darius's face. That's not possible, he said. I know what I saw. The broken chain is not my banner. His voice had gone rough, strained. It's my brother's, Prince Caden's personal standard. Elena stared at him. Your brother. I didn't order any raid on the eastern border that year. I was dealing with the northern territories. There was an uprising, negotiations that took months. Darius was pacing now, moving through the small cell like a caged animal. Caden was supposed to be handling routine patrols, keeping the peace. He never reported any engagement with rogues in Silverbrook. Are you saying your brother massacred my village without your knowledge? I'm saying I don't know what my brother did. Darius stopped, turned to face her. The devastation was back in his eyes, but now it was mixed with something else. Something that looked like horror. But I'm going to find out. For a moment, just a moment, Elena felt something shift inside her. The hatred that had kept her warm for 7 years flickered, uncertain. Then she remembered her mother's screams, and the hatred came roaring back. Even if that's true, she said coldly, you're still responsible. You're the king. This is your kingdom. These are your soldiers. Whatever your brother did, he did it in your name. Yes. The word came out like it had been torn from him. Yes, he did. He left without another word. Elena listened to his footsteps fade up the corridor, and told herself the hollow feeling in her chest was satisfaction. He came back the next night, and the night after that. Each visit he asked more questions. Not about the raid, he seemed to have accepted what she'd told him, but about her life before. Her father's healing practice. Her mother's songs. Lily's laugh. Elena didn't know why she answered. Maybe it was the loneliness. Maybe it was the way he listened, like her memories were precious things that deserved to be heard. Maybe it was the mate bond, trying to forge connections where none should exist. Whatever the reason, she found herself talking, telling stories she hadn't spoken aloud in 7 years. And with each story, something in Darius's expression grew softer, more human. She hated it. On the 4th night, he brought her a blanket. She threw it back in his face. On the 5th night, he brought her real food, roasted chicken and fresh bread, not the thin gruel the guards provided. She ate it only because she was starving, and refused to thank him. On the 6th night, he sat in the corner of her cell for 3 hours without saying a word. Just sat there, keeping her company in the dark. Elena told herself she didn't find comfort in his presence. She told herself the way her body relaxed when he entered the cell was just exhaustion. She told herself the strange warmth that kindled in her chest whenever he was near was nothing but her own imagination. She was lying. She knew she was lying. The mate bond was trying to take root. The 7th night, everything changed. Elena woke to pain. Not the dull ache of cold and hunger. She'd grown used to that. This was different. This was fire in her veins, lightning in her bones, a roar building in her chest that she couldn't contain. She screamed. Guards came running, then healers. Then, finally, Darius himself, bursting into her cell with wild eyes and terror on his face. "What's happening to her?" he demanded, dropping to his knees beside her convulsing body. "Tell me what's happening." "I don't know." The head healer, an ancient woman named Marta, was running her hands over Elena's body with growing horror. "This shouldn't be possible. She's wolfless. There's no beast inside her to—" Elena screamed again. This time, the sound wasn't entirely human. "Get back!" Darius shoved Marta away just as Elena's body arched off the ground. Light poured from her skin. Not moonlight, something older and stranger, something that made the very air in the dungeon vibrate with power. When it faded, Elena lay gasping on the cold stone floor. Every nerve in her body was on fire. Every sense was amplified 100-fold. She could smell the fear on the guards, the confusion on the healers, the desperate concern rolling off Darius in waves. And beneath it all, she could feel something else. Something she'd never felt before. Presence. Deep inside her. Waiting. "That's not possible," Marta whispered. She was dormant. Completely dormant. Her wolf shouldn't exist. But it does. Darius's voice was strange. Almost odd. "She has a wolf. Not just a wolf." Marta was backing toward the door, her face pale with terror. "Your Majesty, I've never seen power like that. Not in any wolf, any alpha, any—" She broke off. "She's an abomination. The council will demand her execution. The council can demand whatever it likes." Darius gathered Elena into his arms, lifting her from the cold stone floor as if she weighed nothing. "I'm moving her to the upper chambers. She needs warmth, rest, care." "Your Majesty." "Now, Marta." The healer fled. Elena should have protested, should have demanded he put her down, insisted she wanted nothing from him, that she'd rather die in the dungeon than accept his help. But she was so tired, so cold, and his arms were warm, and his heartbeat was steady against her ear, and for just a moment, just this once, she let herself stop fighting. The chambers he moved her to were beautiful. Silk sheets, a roaring fireplace, a bed large enough for 3, windows that looked out over the kingdom, and a balcony where she could feel the wind on her face. Elena hated that she loved it. She hated even more that the wolf inside her. Her wolf, after 23 years of believing she had none, seemed to purr with contentment whenever Darius was near. The council met this morning. Darius stood by the window, his back to her, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of red and gold. "They're calling you an abomination, a threat to the kingdom. They want you executed before your power can fully manifest." "And what did you tell them?" "That they could try to take you from me." He turned. His silver eyes were blazing. That I would kill every last one of them before I let them touch you. Something twisted in Elena's chest. That hollow ache again, the one that felt too much like longing. I didn't ask you to protect me. You didn't have to. I still hate you. I know. He crossed the room, stopping at the foot of her bed. Close enough that she could see the lines of exhaustion on his face. The weight of impossible choices in his eyes. I'm going to investigate what happened to your village. What my brother did. I'm going to find the truth, Elena. Whatever that truth is. And if the truth is that your brother is a monster, then I'll deal with him as a monster deserves. He left before she could respond. Left her alone with her new wolf, her reluctant gratitude, and the growing, terrifying suspicion that the king she'd sworn to hate might not be the villain she'd always believed. The next night, a different visitor came. Elena was standing on the balcony, letting the cold air clear her head, when she heard the door open behind her. She turned, expecting Darius. It wasn't Darius. The man who stood in her doorway was younger, leaner. He shared Darius's dark hair and strong jaw, but there was something wrong with his smile. Something cold and calculating behind his pale blue eyes. So you're the Omega who rejected my brother. Prince Caden stepped into the room, closing the door behind him. I have to admit, I'm impressed. No one's ever had the nerve to humiliate him quite so publicly before. Elena's new wolf stirred inside her. A warning. A threat. What do you want? Just to see you for myself. The woman who's turned my brother into a lovesick fool. Caden circled her slowly, his gaze traveling over her body in a way that made her skin crawl. He's been investigating Silverbrook, you know, asking questions he shouldn't ask. Is causing problems. Problems for whom? Caden's smile widened. For everyone. He stopped in front of her, reached out and caught her wrist before she could pull away. What an interesting birthmark, he murmured, tracing the crescent moon that had been there since birth. I've seen this before. Do you know where? Elena's blood went cold. On the Alpha of Willowmere. Caden's eyes met hers, and she saw it. The recognition, the cruel satisfaction of a hunter who'd found his prey. The Alpha my soldiers were specifically ordered to eliminate, along with his entire bloodline. The world tilted. What? You really don't know, do you? Caden laughed softly. Oh, this is delicious. You're not a random orphan, little Omega. You're the lost daughter of the Willowmere Alpha. The heir to a bloodline I was supposed to wipe from existence. That's not. My father was a healer. Your father was the Alpha of one of the most powerful packs on the eastern border. A pack that refused to bend the knee to our kingdom. A pack that needed to be made an example of. Caden's grip on her wrist tightened. I thought we'd killed you all. Imagine my surprise when you turned up in my brother's throne room. Elena's wolf was snarling now, pushing against her control, demanding blood. You. It was you. You gave the orders. You killed my family. I did what needed to be done. What my brother was too weak to do. Caden's smile never wavered. And now I'm going to finish the job. He moved fast. Faster than she could track. And suddenly his hand was around her throat, lifting her off the ground, cutting off her air. Such a shame, he said softly. The little Omega fell from her balcony. Tragic, really. My brother will be devastated. Elena's vision was going dark. Her wolf was howling inside her, fighting to break free. But she didn't know how to let it. Didn't know how to access this power she'd only just discovered. The door exploded inward. Darius stood in the wreckage, his eyes blazing silver, his body already shifting into something massive and terrifying and beautiful. Brother. The word came out as a roar. Put her down. Caden dropped Elena. She hit the floor gasping, clutching her bruised throat, watching as two princes faced each other across the room. I see the abomination has you completely enthralled, Caden said mildly. You do realize she's manipulating you? Using the bond to. I heard everything. Darius's voice was barely human. Every word. Willowmere. The Alpha bloodline. You. For the first time, something like fear flickered across Caden's face. Darius! Run! Caden ran, and Elena, still gasping on the floor of her beautiful prison, looked up at the king who had just saved her life and felt the mate bond pulse with a warmth she could no longer deny. Chapter 3. The first time Elena shifted, she thought she was dying. Pain ripped through her body like lightning, tearing at muscles and bones that had never been asked to change before. Her spine arched off the bed. Her fingers curled into claws that shredded the silk sheets beneath her. And somewhere deep inside, her wolf howled with 23 years of suppressed fury finally demanding release. Breathe. Darius's voice cut through the agony. Elena, you have to breathe. She couldn't breathe. She couldn't think. She could only feel the fire in her veins, the beast clawing at her insides, the terrifying sensation of her body trying to become something it had forgotten how to be. Then, as suddenly as it had begun, the shift stopped. Incomplete. Her hands were still clawed, her eyes still burning gold, but her body remained stubbornly human. Elena collapsed back against the ruined sheets, gasping. What? She could barely form words. What's wrong with me? Nothing is wrong with you. Darius was kneeling beside her bed, his face pale with worry. Your wolf was suppressed for too long. She's fighting to emerge, but your body doesn't remember how to let her. Suppressed. Elena forced herself to sit up. Her claws were slowly retracting, the gold fading from her eyes. I was born wolfless. Everyone said. Everyone was wrong. His jaw tightened. Or they lied. A wolf this powerful doesn't simply fail to manifest. Someone bound her. Locked her away inside you. The implications of that hit Elena like a physical blow. Someone had deliberately stripped her of her wolf. Someone had made her believe she was broken, defective, less than every other Lycan in the kingdom. Who? She demanded. Who would do that? I don't know. Darius rose to his feet. But I intend to find out. In the meantime, you need training. Your wolf is awake now, and she won't be ignored. If you don't learn to control her, she'll tear you apart from the inside. I don't want your help. I know. Something flickered in his silver eyes. Hurt, maybe, or resignation. That's why I'm not the one who'll be training you. Sarah arrived the next morning. She was everything Elena wasn't. Tall, powerful, radiating the kind of confident authority that came from a lifetime of knowing exactly what she was capable of. Her dark skin gleamed in the sunlight streaming through Elena's windows, and her close-cropped hair revealed a series of scars along her scalp that spoke of battles survived. So you're the Omega who brought the king to his knees. Sarah's voice was dry, unimpressed. Literally. I didn't ask for any of this. No one ever does. Sarah circled Elena slowly, assessing. The king says your wolf is emerging after years of suppression. He says you're powerful. Dangerously so. The king says a lot of things. He does. But in the 15 years I've served him, I've never known him to be wrong about a wolf's potential. Sarah stopped in front of Elena, arms crossed. So here's how this is going to work. Every morning, before dawn, you'll meet me in the lower training grounds. You'll do exactly what I tell you. You won't complain, you won't argue, and you won't waste my time with your feelings about the king or the kingdom or anything else. Understood. Elena bristled. I'm not some soldier you can order around. No. You're a woman with a wild wolf inside her and no idea how to control it, which makes you a danger to yourself and everyone around you. Sarah leaned closer. I don't care if you hate the king. I don't care if you hate this palace. I don't care if you hate me, but I will not let you die because you're too proud to accept help. So, are we understood? For a long moment, Elena held Sarah's gaze. Then slowly she nodded. Good. Sarah's expression didn't soften, but something in her posture relaxed slightly. Training starts tomorrow. Don't be late. The days that followed were brutal. Sarah pushed Elena harder than she'd ever been pushed in her life. They ran until Elena's legs gave out. They fought until her muscles screamed for mercy. And through it all, Sarah demanded more effort, more focus, more control. Your wolf isn't your enemy, Sarah said one morning, watching Elena struggle through another failed shift. She's a part of you. You can't fight her into submission. You have to work with her. I don't know how. Elena was on her hands and knees, panting, her body aching from the latest incomplete transformation. She's so angry, so wild. Every time I try to let her out, it feels like she's going to consume me. That's because you're afraid of her. Sarah crouched beside Elena, her voice uncharacteristically gentle. She's been locked away for 23 years. She has every right to be angry. But she's not trying to destroy you. She's trying to protect you. Protect me from what? From whatever tried to suppress her in the first place. Sarah helped Elena to her feet. Think about it. A wolf this powerful, bound from birth. Someone saw what you could become and was terrified of it. That's why they locked her away. Elena thought about her father, the village healer, the man she'd believed was just a simple farmer with a gift for medicine. The Alpha of Willowmere, Caden had called him. A bloodline I was supposed to wipe from existence. My parents, she said slowly. They must have known. They must have bound her to protect me. Possibly. Or someone else bound her to keep you weak. Sarah's expression was grim. Either way, she's awake now. And the only way forward is through. 2 weeks into training, the palace began to transform. Servants rushed through corridors carrying armfuls of silk and flowers. The great hall was draped in silver and white. And everywhere Elena went, she heard whispers about the same thing. The king's selection ball. It's a centuries-old tradition, Sarah explained during one of their training sessions. Unmated she-wolves from noble families come to compete for the king's hand. There are formal dances, political negotiations, and at the end of the week, the king is expected to announce his choice for queen. Elena felt something twist in her chest. Something that felt uncomfortably like jealousy. He's going to choose a queen? The council is demanding it. They say his Omega obsession is weakening the kingdom. That he needs a proper mate. Someone powerful, politically connected, worthy of ruling at his side. And what does he say? Sarah gave her a long look. He says he already has a mate. The jealousy dissolved, replaced by something worse. Something warm and unwanted and terrifyingly close to hope. Elena crushed it ruthlessly. It doesn't matter, she said. I don't want to be his queen. I don't want to be anything to him. Are you sure about that? Yes. But even as she said it, Elena knew she was lying. The mate bond was growing stronger every day. She could feel Darius's presence like a second heartbeat in her chest. She knew when he was near, when he was worried, when he was thinking about her. And worst of all, she was starting to care. The noble she-wolves arrived in waves. They came from every territory in the kingdom. Beautiful, powerful, dripping with wealth and ambition. Elena watched from her window as their carriages rolled through the palace gates, each one more elaborate than the last. One carriage in particular caught her attention. Pure black with silver trim, pulled by 6 midnight horses, bearing a banner she didn't recognize. Lady Vivian, Sarah said, coming to stand beside her at the window. The council's choice. She's from one of the oldest families in the kingdom. Powerful, wealthy, and completely ruthless. She sounds perfect for him. She sounds like a snake. Sarah's voice was flat. She's also one of Caden's closest allies. They've been plotting together for years. Elena's blood went cold. Caden? But Darius. Darius can't touch his brother without proof. And Caden's been very careful not to leave any. Sarah turned away from the window. Watch yourself this week. The ball isn't just a celebration. It's a battlefield. And you, little Omega, are the biggest target in the palace. That night, Elena couldn't sleep. Her wolf was restless, pacing inside her like a caged animal. Every instinct she had was screaming at her to do something, to run, to fight, to find Darius and... No, she shut that thought down hard. I don't need him. I don't want him. But her feet carried her out of bed anyway. Out of her chambers. Through the silent corridors of the palace. She wasn't sure where she was going until she found herself outside the throne room. The doors were cracked open. Voices drifted through. Elena pressed herself against the wall and listened. Understand your attachment, your majesty, but surely you see reason. A woman's voice, smooth and cultured. Lady Vivian, Elena guessed. The Omega is a liability. Her background is questionable. Her wolf is unstable. And her public rejection of your bond has made you a laughingstock among the other territories. I am aware of the political implications. Darius's voice was cold, controlled. That doesn't change reality. Reality can be shaped, your majesty. Another voice, Caden's, making Elena's wolf snarl inside her. The mate bond is powerful, yes, but it's not unbreakable. There are rituals, ancient practices that can sever even the deepest connections. A pause. When Darius spoke again, his voice was dangerous. You're suggesting I participate in blood magic. I'm suggesting you consider your options. The selection ball is your opportunity to restore your reputation. Choose a proper queen. Let the council deal with the Omega. Deal with her how? She's a security threat. Unstable wolf. Questionable bloodline. Connection to a massacred village that's already raising uncomfortable questions. Caden's voice was casual. Reasonable. Once you've selected your queen, Elena can be quietly removed. For the good of the kingdom. Elena's heart stopped. No one, Darius said, and his voice had dropped to something barely human, will touch her. Brother, this conversation is over. Footsteps approached the door. Elena scrambled backward, ducking around a corner just as Darius strode out of the throne room. His face was thunderous, his hands clenched at his sides. He paused, lifted his head, sniffed the air. He knows I'm here, Elena realized. He can smell me, but he didn't come looking for her. He just stood there for a moment, shoulders tight with tension, then continued down the corridor toward his chambers. Elena waited until his footsteps faded. Then she crept closer to the throne room doors, still cracked open. Caden and Vivian were still inside. He won't choose you willingly, Caden was saying. Not while the bond exists. Then we'll have to remove the obstacle. Vivian's voice was cold, calculating. The blood ritual requires the bonded mate to die under the full moon. The selection ball ends on the night of the lunar apex. How convenient. You'll never get her alone. Darius has her watched constantly. Then we'll have to be creative, won't we? Vivian laughed softly. Don't worry, my prince. By the time the ball ends, I'll be queen. And your brother's precious Omega will be nothing but a memory. Elena ran. She didn't know where she was going. Only that she had to move, had to think, had to figure out what to do with the information burning in her chest. They were going to kill her. Not just kill her. Use her death to sever the mate bond. To clear the way for Vivian to take her place at Darius's side. She should run. Should escape the palace tonight, while she still could, and never look back. But even as she thought it, something else stirred inside her. Her wolf rumbling with a different kind of instinct. They killed our family. They destroyed our pack. And now they want to take our mate. No. The word resonated through Elena's entire being. Not just her wolf, her too. After weeks of fighting the bond, of denying her feelings, of clinging to her hatred like a shield, something had finally shifted. She didn't want to run. She wanted answers. Why had her family really been targeted? What was so dangerous about the Willowmere bloodline that Caden had ordered them all killed? And why had someone bound her wolf in the first place? The truth was here, in this palace, in the secrets that Caden was so desperate to keep buried. And Elena was done hiding. The night of the selection ball arrived. Elena stood in front of the mirror in her chambers, barely recognizing the woman staring back at her. Sarah had arranged everything. The gown was silver silk, cut to cling to her body in ways that made her feel both powerful and exposed. Her dark hair was piled on her head in an elaborate style, threaded through with tiny diamonds that caught the light like stars. And around her neck hung a single pendant, a crescent moon in white gold that Darius had sent that morning without explanation. The birthmark, her family's symbol. He'd had it made for her. You look like a queen, Sarah said from the doorway. I'm not a queen. No, you're something more dangerous. Sarah crossed the room and adjusted a strand of Elena's hair. You're a woman who survived, who refused to break, who looked the most powerful man in the kingdom in the eye and told him no. And that makes me dangerous? It makes you unforgettable. Sarah stepped back. The king is waiting for you at the bottom of the grand staircase. He'll escort you into the ball personally. Elena's stomach dropped. He'll what? Did you think he was going to let you walk in alone? Let the wolves see you as anything less than his equal. Sarah smiled slightly. Darius Blackwood may be many things, but subtle isn't one of them. The grand staircase descended into chaos. 300 nobles packed the ballroom below, all of them dressed in their finest, all of them watching the stairs with barely concealed anticipation. Elena could see them whispering behind their hands, pointing, speculating about who would descend next. At the bottom of the stairs, Darius waited. He was dressed in black and silver, his dark hair pulled back from his face, the crown of the Northern Territories gleaming on his brow. He looked every inch the king. Powerful, untouchable, commanding, but his eyes were fixed only on her. Elena descended slowly. She could feel every gaze in the room tracking her progress, could hear the whispers rising like a tide. The Omega, the servant, the woman who rejected the king. She lifted her chin and kept walking. Darius met her at the bottom of the stairs, his hand extended, palm up, waiting. You came, he said quietly. You didn't give me much choice. I gave you every choice. His silver eyes burned into hers. You're here because you chose to be. Elena took his hand. The moment their skin touched, the mate bond flared between them, warm and bright and undeniable. She felt it in her bones, in her blood, in the suddenly frantic beating of her heart. Darius felt it too. She could see it in the way his breath caught, the way his fingers tightened around hers. May I have this dance? He asked. The room had gone silent. Every eye was on them. One dance, Elena heard herself say. That's all. They danced. Elena had never learned formal ballroom dancing. Kitchen servants didn't attend balls. But Darius led her with such confidence that it didn't matter. He held her close, one hand warm against her lower back, the other clasping her fingers like she was something precious. Around them, the other dancers had stopped. The entire ballroom watched as the king ignored every noble she-wolf who'd come to compete for his hand and danced only with the Omega they'd all dismissed. They hate me, Elena murmured. They fear you, Darius corrected. There's a difference. Why would they fear me? I'm wolfless, or I'm nobody. You're the woman who made me kneel. His voice dropped lower. You're the woman who refused me when anyone else would have begged for the honor. You're more powerful than any of them, Elena, and they know it. I'm not powerful. My wolf barely manifests. I can't even complete a shift. Your wolf brought every healer in the palace to their knees with a single awakening. Your wolf made me feel things I haven't felt in 200 years. Darius's hand pressed more firmly against her back, drawing her closer. When you learn to control her, and you will, there won't be a wolf in this kingdom who can stand against you. Elena looked up at him, at this man who should have been her enemy, who she'd sworn to hate, who kept proving himself to be something other than the monster she'd believed. Why? She asked. Why do you keep helping me? I rejected you. I told you I'd rather die than be your mate. Because you were right to reject me. The words shocked her into silence. My soldiers destroyed your village, Darius continued, his voice rough. My kingdom murdered your family. My brother ordered the deaths of everyone you loved. Whether I knew or not, whether I gave the orders or not, it happened under my rule. Your hatred is earned. Elena, I don't expect you to forgive me. I don't even expect you to stop hating me. Then what do you expect? Nothing. His silver eyes were soft in the candlelight. I expect nothing. I just want you to live, to be safe, to have the chance to become everything you were meant to be. Something cracked inside Elena's chest. Some wall she'd built so carefully over the past 7 years. The mate bond flared again. Not just warmth this time, but something deeper. Something that felt like understanding, like recognition, like two broken pieces finally finding their match. I don't hate this, Elena realized, and the thought terrified her. I don't hate him. The music ended. The dancers began to move again, and the moment shattered. But Elena could still feel it. That warmth in her chest. That impossible, unwanted, undeniable connection. She hated that she didn't hate it. And she knew, with terrible certainty, that everything was about to change. Chapter 4. The royal archives were buried deep beneath the palace, in a section so old that even the servants whispered about it in hushed tones. They said the tunnels down there had been carved before the first Blackwood king took the throne. They said the darkness itself had teeth. Elena didn't care about the darkness. She cared about answers. This is insane, Sarah muttered, holding her torch higher as they descended yet another flight of crumbling stone stairs. If we're caught down here, the king won't be able to protect us. The archives are sacred ground. Even he can't override the council's authority over them. Then we won't get caught. Famous last words. But Sarah kept moving, her free hand resting on the sword at her hip. What exactly are we looking for? Anything about Willowmere, about my family, about why Caden wanted us dead. Elena's voice was harder than she'd intended. The conversation she'd overheard between Caden and Vivian still burned in her mind. The blood ritual requires the bonded mate to die under the full moon. 3 days. She had 3 days until the lunar apex. 3 days to find out why her family had been slaughtered, and whether saving herself meant letting the king die. The stairs ended in a massive iron door, rusted with age and carved with symbols Elena didn't recognize. Sarah produced a key from somewhere inside her armor. Where did you get that? Elena asked. The king gave it to me years ago, for emergencies. Sarah fitted the key into the lock. He trusts me with his life, which is why I'm trusting you not to make me regret this. The door groaned open, revealing a cavern so vast that their torchlight couldn't reach the far walls. Rows upon rows of shelves stretched into the darkness, loaded with scrolls, books, and artifacts that looked older than the kingdom itself. The Blackwood archives, Sarah said quietly. Every secret this family has ever kept is somewhere in this room. Elena stepped inside. The air was thick with dust and something else. Something that made her wolf stir uneasily. Power. Ancient and sleeping, but present nonetheless. Where do we start? The territorial records should be in the eastern wing. If there's anything about Willowmere, it'll be there. Sarah gestured toward the right. I'll keep watch. You have 2 hours before the guard rotation changes. 2 hours to find 7 years' worth of answers. Elena started walking. The eastern wing was a maze of shelves and shadows. Elena moved through it systematically, pulling scrolls and books at random, scanning their contents, discarding them when they proved useless. Tax records from a century ago. Trade agreements with the southern territories. Census data from villages that no longer existed. Nothing about Willowmere. Nothing about her family. Nothing about... Her hand brushed against a leather-bound book that was smaller than the others, tucked away on a bottom shelf like someone had wanted it forgotten. The spine was blank, but when Elena opened it, she found handwritten pages covered in cramped, urgent script. The private journal of King Aldrich Blackwood. Read the first page. For the eyes of the king alone. Elena's breath caught. Aldrich Blackwood, Darius's father, the king who had ruled before him. She flipped through the pages, scanning the entries. Most were mundane, notes about council meetings, concerns about territorial disputes, complaints about his younger son's rebellious nature. Then she found it. Year 847 of the Blackwood reign. The Guardian Pack has sent another warning. They claim the vessel will be born within 2 generations, that the goddess's power is stirring, preparing to choose its host. I have doubled the protection around Willowmere as they requested, though I confess I find their claims increasingly difficult to believe. And yet, Darius returned from the northern campaign today. When he walked into the throne room, every torch in the hall flared bright enough to blind. He claimed it was a draft from the windows, But I saw his eyes. I saw the silver fire burning in them. My son is changing. And I fear I know why. Elena's hands were shaking. She turned more pages. Year 849. Alpha Marcus Vance of Willowmere has requested a private audience. He brings disturbing news. His seers have confirmed what I dreaded. The vessel has been born. The goddess's chosen host walks among us. It is Darius, my heir, my firstborn son. The goddess's power will consume him unless the guardians can complete the binding ritual. But the ritual requires time, and Caden has been asking questions. Dangerous questions about the source of our family's power. About the pact the first king made with the dying goddess. About why Willowmere has always been protected while other villages have been sacrificed for far less. I must speak with Marcus. We must accelerate the timeline. If Caden learns the truth before the ritual is complete. The entry ended abruptly, the next page torn out. Elena flipped frantically through the remaining journal. More pages were missing, torn out carelessly, leaving ragged edges behind. But near the end, she found one final entry. Year 850. It is done. Marcus has been warned. The guardians know what they must do, and Darius knows nothing. This is the only way to protect him and to protect the kingdom. But I have made a terrible mistake. I told Caden about the goddess. Not everything. Just enough to satisfy his curiosity. I thought if I gave him a piece of the truth, he would stop digging for more. I was wrong. He knows about the vessel now. He knows what his brother will become. And I see the way he looks at Darius when he thinks no one is watching. I see the hunger in his eyes. May the goddess forgive me. I have armed the wolf who will devour us all. The journal ended there. Elena stood frozen in the darkness. The book clutched in her hands, trying to process what she'd just read. A goddess. A vessel. A pact made centuries ago that had given the Blackwood Kings their legendary power. And her family, the guardians meant to protect the vessel, murdered by Caden to prevent the binding ritual from ever being completed. Elena! Sarah's voice came from somewhere behind her, sharp with warning. We need to move. I hear footsteps. Elena shoved the journal into her clothes and ran. They made it back to Elena's chambers just as dawn began to lighten the sky. Sarah left to resume her duties, extracting a promise from Elena to stay hidden until nightfall. Elena couldn't sleep. She sat in the window seat, watching the sun rise over the kingdom that had destroyed her family, and tried to make sense of everything she'd learned. Darius was the vessel, the host for some ancient goddess's power. And her father, her quiet, gentle father who had healed sick children and mended broken bones, had been an alpha, the leader of a guardian pack sworn to protect the vessel at all costs. Caden had killed them to prevent the protection. And now, with the blood ritual, he planned to kill Darius too, to steal the goddess's power for himself. Elena closed her eyes. Her wolf stirred inside her, restless and agitated. He's our mate, the wolf seemed to say. They want to kill our mate. He's the king of the monsters who destroyed our home. Elena countered. He didn't know. He tried to stop it. He's been protecting us. He's still a Blackwood. His family's sins are written in our blood. But even as she thought it, Elena knew it wasn't that simple anymore. Nothing was simple. Not her feelings. Not her choices. Not the impossible weight of what she'd discovered. She could let Caden complete the ritual. Let Darius die. Let the goddess's power pass to another host. Or be stolen by a prince who had already proven himself capable of massacre. Or she could embrace her birthright. Become the guardian she was born to be. Save the man she'd sworn to hate. I don't have to love him to save him, Elena told herself. I just have to decide if he deserves to live. But even as she formed the thought, she knew it was a lie. This wasn't about whether Darius deserved to live. This was about whether she could live with herself if she let him die. That evening, Elena went looking for Darius. She found him in his private study, surrounded by maps and reports, looking more exhausted than she'd ever seen him. He looked up when she entered, and something in his expression shifted. Surprise, maybe, or hope. Elena! He rose from his desk. Is something wrong? Everything is wrong. She closed the door behind her. We need to talk. Of course. He gestured to the chairs by the fireplace. Please sit. I'd rather stand. Elena crossed her arms, trying to hold onto her composure. I know about the goddess. Darius went very still. What? The pact your ancestor made. The power that's been passed down through your bloodline. The vessel that's born every few generations. Elena met his eyes. I know you're the current vessel. And I know my family were the guardians meant to protect you. For a long moment, Darius said nothing. Then he sank back into his chair, his head dropping into his hands. How? He asked. How did you find out? Your father's journal. It was in the archives. My father. Darius laughed, but there was no humor in it. He never told me. He died before. He broke off. I only learned the truth after I took the throne. The goddess's power has been growing inside me for decades, and I had no idea why. Why didn't you tell me? When would I have told you? He looked up at her, his silver eyes haunted. When you were screaming your rejection in my face. When you were throwing blankets at me in the dungeon. When you could barely stand to be in the same room as me. He shook his head. I was trying to find another way. Trying to locate the guardians to complete the ritual on my own. I didn't know Willowmere was the guardian pack until you told me about the raid. And now I know the truth. My brother murdered your family to prevent them from binding the goddess's power. To keep me vulnerable. Darius's voice hardened. He's been planning this for years, maybe decades, and I was too blind to see it. Elena thought about the blood ritual. About Vivian's cold voice describing Elena's death under the full moon. About Caden's hungry eyes. She should tell him. She should warn him about what was coming. But something held her back. Maybe it was the fear that he wouldn't believe her. Maybe it was the old, stubborn hatred that still flickered in the corners of her heart. Or maybe it was simply the need to make this decision on her own terms. There's something else, she said instead. The guardians weren't just protectors. They had a role in the binding ritual. A specific purpose. I know. Darius's gaze dropped to her wrist, to the crescent moon birthmark that marked her as her father's daughter. Your bloodline carries the key to controlling the goddess's power. Without a guardian, the binding is impossible. And without the binding, the power will eventually consume me, or someone will find a way to steal it. His jaw tightened. Either way, I won't survive much longer. The words hit Elena like a physical blow. She'd known intellectually that Darius was in danger. But hearing him say it so calmly, so matter-of-factly, you're dying. Slowly. The goddess's power is too strong for any vessel to contain forever. The binding ritual doesn't just protect me from theft. It stabilizes the power, allows the vessel to channel it safely. He managed a ghost of a smile. Your father was supposed to perform it when I came of age. Obviously, that didn't happen. Elena's throat was tight. How long do you have? I don't know. Months. Maybe a year. Darius rose from his chair and crossed to the window, his back to her. I've made my peace with it, Elena. I've had 230 years. That's more than most wolves could dream of. That's not. Elena stopped herself. What was she going to say? That it wasn't fair? That he deserved better? That she didn't want him to die? All of those things were true, and admitting any of them terrified her. The ritual, she said instead. What would it require? From me. Darius turned. His expression was carefully blank, but she could see hope flickering in his eyes. You would have to accept your role as my guardian. Fully. Completely. It's not just a ceremony. It's a bond. Almost as deep as the mate bond itself. Would I have to? She couldn't finish the sentence. Would you have to accept the mate bond too? Darius shook his head. No. The guardian bond is separate. You could complete the ritual and still walk away from me afterward. Live your own life. Never see me again. But you would always feel it. The connection. The pull. His voice softened. I won't lie to you, Elena. The guardian bond isn't something you can undo. Once it's formed, it's permanent. Permanent. Another chain. Another thing tying her to this palace, this kingdom, this man. I need time, Elena said. To think. Of course. Darius returned to his desk, gathering his maps and reports. Take whatever time you need. This is your choice, Elena. It always has been. Elena turned to leave. At the door, she paused. Darius. He looked up. Your brother is planning something. For the night of the lunar apex. She watched his expression carefully. You should increase your guard. Something flickered in his silver eyes. Understanding, maybe, or resignation. I know. You know. I've known for weeks. Caden has never been subtle about his ambitions. Darius's smile was sad. But thank you for warning me. Elena nodded once, sharply, and left before she could say anything else. That night, alone in her chambers, Elena made her decision. She didn't make it because she loved Darius. She still wasn't sure what she felt for him. Beyond the pull of the mate bond and the grudging respect that had grown between them, she didn't make it because she wanted to be a guardian. The role felt foreign and frightening, a destiny she'd never asked for. She made it because her father had believed in it, because her mother had died protecting it, because Lily, wherever she was, alive or dead, deserved to have someone honor their family's sacrifice. And she made it because she had looked into Caden's eyes and seen the truth. He was the real monster. He was the one who had destroyed everything she loved. And if she let him win, if she let him steal the goddess's power and murder his brother, then her family would have died for nothing. I choose answers over safety, Elena thought, remembering the words she'd spoken to herself in the archive. But it was more than that now. She chose her birthright, her family's legacy, her father's last impossible wish. She chose to save the king, even if it meant binding herself to him forever. Chapter 5. The full moon rose like a silver coin over the palace, flooding the great hall with light that seemed almost alive. Elena stood at her window, watching it climb higher into the night sky, and felt her wolf stirring with an urgency she'd never experienced before. Tonight. It all ended tonight. She had spent the past 2 days preparing, training with Sarah until her muscles screamed, memorizing every word of the guardian ritual that she'd found hidden in her father's journal, practicing her shift over and over, pushing through the pain, demanding that her wolf emerge fully instead of the broken, partial transformations she'd managed before. She still hadn't succeeded. Not completely. But tonight she would have to. A knock at her door. Sarah entered without waiting for permission, her face grim. It's time. The selection ceremony is beginning. Elena turned from the window. She was dressed simply. No silk gown tonight, no diamonds in her hair. Just dark clothes that would allow her to move, to fight, to do whatever needed to be done. Darius. Already in the great hall. The council insisted he attend, despite his protests. Sarah's jaw tightened. Caden's been whispering in their ears all week. Half of them think Darius has lost his mind. The other half are too afraid to disagree. And Vivian? Positioned near the throne. She's carrying something under her cloak. I couldn't see what, but I'd bet my sword it's the ritual dagger. The ritual dagger. The one that would sever the mate bond and steal the goddess's power. The one that required Elena's blood, Elena's death, to complete its work. Then we don't have much time. Elena moved toward the door. Stay close. When things go wrong, and they will, I need you to protect the exits. Don't let Vivian escape. And you! Elena's wolf rumbled inside her, fierce and ready. I'm going to end this. The great hall was packed with wolves. Every noble family in the kingdom had gathered for the final selection ceremony, the night when King Darius Blackwood was expected to announce his chosen queen. They stood in glittering rows, dressed in their finest, watching the throne with hungry, expectant eyes. Darius sat on that throne like a man awaiting execution. His face was calm, controlled, but Elena could feel his tension through the mate bond. He knew something was coming. He just didn't know what. Elena slipped through a side entrance, keeping to the shadows along the wall. She could see Caden standing near the front of the crowd, his pale eyes fixed on his brother with barely concealed anticipation. Vivian stood beside him, beautiful and deadly in a gown of blood-red silk. The High Counselor, an ancient wolf named Lord Aldrich, stepped forward and raised his hands for silence. "Lords and ladies of the realm," he intoned, "we gather tonight under the full moon to witness the king's selection. For 200 years, King Darius has ruled without a queen at his side. Tonight that changes." A murmur ran through the crowd. Elena saw several noble she-wolves straightening, preening, preparing themselves to be chosen. "Before the selection begins," Lord Aldrich continued, "Prince Caden has requested the right to address the court." Darius's head turned sharply toward his brother. Elena saw his eyes narrow with suspicion. Caden stepped forward, his expression grave and sorrowful, a perfect mask of brotherly concern. "My lords and ladies," he began, his voice carrying easily through the hall, "I come before you tonight with a heavy heart. What I must say will shock you. It will anger you, but it must be said, for the good of our kingdom." He paused, letting the tension build. "My brother, King Darius, is unfit to rule." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Darius rose from his throne, his hands clenching into fists. "Caden, please brother, let me finish." Caden's voice was silk over steel. "For months now, our king has been obsessed with a wolfless Omega, a servant, a woman of no family, no power, no status. He has neglected his duties, ignored the council's advice, and allowed his judgment to be clouded by an impossible mate bond. The mate bond is sacred," someone in the crowd began. "The mate bond is being manipulated." Caden's voice rose. "The woman, Elena Vance, is not what she appears. She is the daughter of a traitorous alpha, a man who plotted against the crown and was executed for his crimes. She has bewitched our king with forbidden magic, weakened him, made him vulnerable to our enemies." Elena's blood ran cold. He was twisting everything, making her family into villains, making her into a threat. "My brother's weakness endangers us all," Caden continued. "The goddess's power that has protected our bloodline for centuries is fading. Darius can no longer channel it properly. He is dying slowly, yes, but dying nonetheless. And when he falls, who will protect us?" He spread his arms wide, his voice ringing with false sincerity. "I call upon this court to recognize the truth. Darius Blackwood is no longer fit to wear the crown. The succession must pass to me, the only Blackwood strong enough to carry our family's legacy forward." Silence. Then, slowly, voices began to rise, some in protest defending Darius, but others, too many others, were nodding, whispering, looking at Caden with something like hope. "This is treason," Darius said, his voice cutting through the noise. "You dare to. I dare to save our kingdom." Caden's mask slipped for just a moment, revealing the hungry ambition beneath. "The council has already voted, 12-3. You are to be removed from the throne tonight, brother. Peacefully, if possible." His smile turned cold. "But we are prepared for other methods." On cue, guards began moving through the crowd. Not the king's guards, Elena realized, but Caden's. They surrounded Darius, weapons drawn, and Vivian stepped forward, pushing back her cloak to reveal the dagger at her hip. Even from across the hall, Elena could feel the dark power radiating from it. "One more thing," Caden said softly. "The Omega must die. Her blood is the key to completing the transfer of power. A small sacrifice for the good of the realm." He nodded to two of his guards. "Find her. Bring her to me." Elena had heard enough. She stepped out of the shadows. "You want me, Caden?" Her voice rang through the hall. "Here I am." Every head turned, every eye fixed on her. The Omega, the servant, the woman who had dared to reject the king. Elena walked forward, her heart pounding but her stride steady. She could feel her wolf pressing against her skin, demanding release. "Not yet, not yet." "Elena, no." Darius started toward her, but his guards blocked his path. "It's all right." Elena met his eyes across the hall, and for just a moment, she let him feel her through the bond, her determination, her resolve, her complete lack of fear. "I know what I'm doing." She turned back to Caden, stopping just out of arm's reach. "You've told so many lies tonight. Let me tell some truths." "Guards. I am Elena Vance," she continued, her voice rising over his. "Daughter of Alpha Marcus Vance of Willowmere. My father wasn't a traitor. He was a guardian. One of a bloodline sworn to protect the goddess's power that flows through the Blackwood Kings." Murmurs swept through the crowd. 7 years ago, Caden ordered my village destroyed. Every man, woman, and child slaughtered. Not because we were traitors, but because we were the only ones who could stop him from stealing his brother's power. "Lies." Caden's composure was cracking. "She's lying." "Am I?" Elena pulled the journal from inside her clothes. King Aldrich's journal, the proof of everything she'd claimed. "Your own father wrote it all down. The pact with the goddess. The guardian bloodline. Your hunger for power that he saw and feared." She threw the journal at Caden's feet. "You murdered my family to make your brother vulnerable. You've been planning this coup for years, waiting for the right moment, the right moon, the right ritual to steal what was never meant to be yours." "Even if that were true," Caden said, his voice gone deadly quiet, "it changes nothing. The council has voted. The guards are mine. And you—" His hand shot out, grabbing her wrist. "You are going to die." He nodded to Vivian, who drew the ritual dagger and began to move forward. Elena smiled. "No," she said, "I'm not." And she let her wolf free. The shift was unlike anything she'd experienced before. It wasn't painful this time. It wasn't a battle or a struggle. It was a release. A door thrown open. A cage unlocked. A part of herself she denied for 23 years finally allowed to exist. Power flooded through her. Power that burned away her fear, her doubt, her hesitation. Power that reshaped her bones and transformed her flesh into something magnificent. When the shift completed, Elena stood in the center of the great hall in full wolf form, and she was beautiful. Her fur was white as moonlight, as pale and pure as fresh snow. On her shoulder, visible even through her coat, blazed the mark of the goddess's guardian. A crescent moon surrounded by flames. Caden stumbled backward. "That's not possible." Elena lunged. She hit him in the chest, driving him to the ground, her jaws snapping inches from his throat. Around her, chaos erupted. Caden's guards rushed forward, but Darius was faster. Finally free of his captors, he shifted in a blur of shadow and silver, his massive black wolf tearing through anyone who tried to stop him. They fought together. Elena had never trained with Darius, had never even seen his wolf form until this moment. But the mate bond guided them like a river finding the sea. When she feinted left, he struck right. When she defended, he attacked. They moved as one, two halves of a whole, perfectly synchronized, utterly unstoppable. Caden's guards fell. One by one, then in groups, overwhelmed by the combined fury of the king and his mate. Vivian tried to run. She made it almost to the door before Sarah appeared, blocking her path, sword drawn and ready. "Going somewhere?" Sarah asked, and Elena heard the satisfaction in her voice. The battle was over in minutes. When the last guard fell, Elena stood over Caden's prone form, her white fur spattered with blood that wasn't hers, her golden eyes burning with the goddess's fire. "Yield," she thought at him, knowing he could hear her through the pack bond. "Yield or I will end you here." Caden's wolf, smaller than she'd expected, brown and unremarkable, whimpered beneath her. His human form re-emerged, and he lay on the cold stone floor, beaten and broken. "You can't kill me," he gasped. "I'm a prince." "The council, the council," Lord Aldrich said, stepping forward from the stunned crowd, "has just witnessed you confess to treason, conspiracy, and regicide. Whatever protection you believed you had is gone. Elena stepped back, allowing the real guards loyal to Darius, to take Caden into custody. Vivian was already in chains, her beautiful face twisted with fury and fear. Slowly, Elena let the shift release. Her human form returned, and she stood in the center of the great hall, exhausted and triumphant, dressed in clothes that had somehow survived the transformation. Around her, wolves began to kneel. First one, then another, then dozens. Nobles who had moments ago supported Caden's coup now dropping to their knees before the Omega who had saved their king. But they weren't just kneeling to Darius, Elena realized. They were kneeling to her. To both of them. Darius shifted back beside her. He was bleeding from a cut on his shoulder, his clothes torn, his dark hair wild around his face. But his eyes, those silver eyes that had haunted her dreams for weeks, were fixed on her with something that looked like wonder. "Elena," he breathed. "Later," she said, though her voice was gentler than she'd intended. "You need a healer." "I need." He stopped himself, took a breath. Later. Later came at dawn. The palace was still in chaos. Guards being sorted, prisoners being secured, the council scrambling to undo the damage Caden had caused. But Darius found Elena on her balcony, watching the sun rise over a kingdom that felt somehow different than it had the day before. "You should be resting," she said without turning around. "I could say the same to you." He moved to stand beside her, close enough that she could feel his warmth but not quite touching. "You fully shifted. For the first time." "I did. You were magnificent." Elena smiled despite herself. "I know." Silence stretched between them, comfortable for once. The mate bond hummed quietly in Elena's chest, no longer fighting her, no longer demanding, just present, waiting. "I need to tell you something," Darius said finally. "About what happens now." Elena turned to face him. He looked different in the dawn light, younger somehow, more human. The weight that had pressed down on his shoulders for so long seemed lighter. "I'm not going to ask you to marry me again." The words hit her like a blow. She hadn't expected, hadn't realized how much she'd. "Instead," he continued, "I'm going to offer you something else. A choice." He took her hand. His fingers were warm, steady, gentle. "The guardian ritual is complete. You saved my life, and in doing so, you bound your power to mine. The goddess's strength is stable now. I won't die. Not anytime soon, anyway." A ghost of a smile crossed his face. "So you've fulfilled your duty. Your family's legacy is honored. Their deaths have meaning." Elena's throat was tight. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying you're free." Darius's silver eyes met hers, full of something that looked heartbreakingly like hope and resignation intertwined. "You can leave. Tonight, if you want. I'll give you money, protection, lands of your own. Your family's name will be restored. You'll never have to see me again." "Darius." "Or," he squeezed her hand, "or you can stay. Not because of the mate bond. Not because of duty or obligation or politics. But because you want to. Because you choose it." He released her hand and stepped back. "I love you, Elena. I've loved you since the moment I saw you. But I won't trap you. I won't force you. If you stay, it has to be because you want to build something with me. Partnership. A future." His voice cracked slightly. "A life." Elena stared at him. At this man who had been her enemy, her captor, her reluctant ally. This man who had knelt before her in a room full of nobles. This man who had fought beside her, bled beside her, trusted her when he had no reason to. She thought about her mother's songs, her father's gentle hands, Lily's bright, infectious laugh. She thought about the dungeon, and the blanket she'd thrown in his face, the dance in the great hall, and the warmth that had kindled in her chest. The way he looked at her, like she was precious, powerful, worth waiting 230 years for. She thought about hatred, and how heavy it was to carry. And she thought about choice, real choice, the kind her family had died to give her. Elena stepped forward, closed the distance between them, took his face in her hands and looked into those silver eyes that had once filled her with such rage. "Ask me again," she whispered. Darius went still. "Elena, ask me again." He searched her face for a long moment. Whatever he saw there made his breath catch. "Elena Vance," he said, his voice rough with emotion. "Will you be my queen? My partner? My mate?" Elena smiled. A real smile. The first one she'd given him without reservation. "Yes." His arms came around her, pulling her close, and when his lips met hers, Elena felt the mate bond flare between them. Not as a chain, but as a bridge. Connection. Promise of something new. Behind them, the sun rose higher, flooding the balcony with golden light. Below them, the kingdom stirred and woke and began to heal. And Elena Vance, orphan, servant, guardian, queen, finally let herself believe in the future. Thank you for watching this video. Subscribe, like, and share this video to continue listening to this type of story daily, and also to appreciate this community too. I would like to hear your wonderful opinion about this story. Please comment below.